Okay, we're going to go ahead and begin. Welcome everybody, and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our webinar focused on reporting your organization's program service accomplishments. My name is Nikita, and we're going just to simply talk about reporting those program service accomplishments and how Tax990 can assist you with your annual 990 series filing. If you have questions during the presentation, you can add them to the chat, and Aubrey will be here assisting me along the way and can address those questions as we go. We will also have a live Q&A opportunity later in the presentation where we will be able to answer your questions live. We do want to mention we are not tax advisors. We will not be providing specific tax advice. We will purely be discussing IRS e-filing requirements and the process of e-filing. For specific tax questions, please contact a tax professional. This presentation will be recorded, so tomorrow we will send an email your way with the recording of the presentation. We will also make it available on our website at tax990.com after the presentation, so you can review it at a later time if necessary. If you can't hear me, or if you are unable to see the video or the presentation or anything, please just put that in the chat so we can address that. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So during the webinar, we're going to talk about IRS e-filing requirements. We'll talk about program service accomplishments and how to report them. We'll review program service revenue and how to e-file with an IRS authorized e-file provider. And then, like I mentioned at the end, we'll have a Q&A that we will answer questions live. To maintain your tax exempt status and remain compliant with the IRS, organizations are required to file a 990 series return on an annual basis. Failure to file could result in penalties by the IRS or revocation of the organization's exempt status. The IRS mandated e-filing for 990 series returns on July 1st of 2019. So organizations filing a return with a tax year beginning date after July 1st, 2019 are required to e-file the returns moving forward. The IRS is moving towards e-filing for several reasons. E-filing reduces the amount of filing errors, and it helps ensure that the IRS guidelines are met, meaning calculations are more accurate and information provided matches information in the IRS database. E-filing also makes filing and IRS processing more efficient. And with e-filing, there's a quicker turnaround time on updated form status. So within just a few days, you'll know whether the return was accepted or rejected. Additionally, just the knowledge that the IRS received your return. You're not relying on postal services and mailing processes to confirm the IRS received your form. So we'll talk about the purpose of reporting program service accomplishments. An organization filing a 990, 990EZ, or 990PF are asked to report their program service activities and accomplishments and their program service revenue. This information is going to be taken into consideration when applying for grants, approaching donors, and increasing your fundraising. The purpose of providing this information is to explain to others how you're operating your organization and utilizing funding to adhere to your mission. It's important to paint a picture of the activities hosted to encourage financial gain. The information organizations provide in this section also helps the IRS determine if the activities are appropriate for the exempt status and gives an opportunity to convey to the public what was accomplished throughout the year. Ultimately, the information reported in this section can have a big impact on your organization, so it's very important that you're completing it properly. Organizations that file 990 series forms must report their program service activities, specifically the 3 largest activities they conducted in terms of expenses. A program service is an activity conducted by an organization to various other organizations or individuals to fulfill the organization's mission. These organizations generally perform activities like adoptions, recreation for the elderly, rehabilitation, or publication of journals or newsletters. These activities also help the organization to accomplish its tax-exempt purpose. Program service activity reporting is determined by the 3 programs with the highest expenses, not including donated services or materials, equipment, or facilities. If your organization has 3 or fewer activities, each activity should be listed. If there are notable activities conducted by the organization, but they are not considered one of the 3 largest, the activities can be reported on Schedule O. Tax990 is not able to specifically determine what your organizations should consider a program service accomplishment, but a few examples of what has been reported as a program service accomplishment could include an organization that conducts charitable activities, college degree programs, assistance for victims of natural disaster or rehabilitation services to residents of a nursing home, a labor union organization that conducts collective bargaining on behalf of its members, an organization that conducts meetings to discuss business issues with the employees, or a social club that creates recreational and dining facilities for members. Again, these are just a few examples. We would not be able to determine for you what would qualify per your organization, and it's best to speak with a tax advisor, such as a CPA or an accountant, or contact the IRS to confirm that information. When reporting your organization's program service accomplishments, you'll begin by describing the organization's mission as expressed in the mission statement. If the organization does not have a mission that's been adopted or ratified by its governing body, the IRS will accept a response of none in this section. Based on your organization's activity, enter the significant program services conducted by your organization for the tax year. You'll be asked to provide an explanation of the program, an expense amount, a grant amount, and a revenue amount for each activity reported as applicable. When describing your organization's program service accomplishments, you should be as clear and concise as possible. Try to use specific measurements, activity objectives, and statistical information in your descriptions. Specific measurements could include clients served, days of care provided, number of sessions or events held, or publications issued. Activity objectives could discuss the goals for the current time period and long-term goals. And statistical information should provide reasonable estimates for any statistical information if exact figures aren't available. Organizations should not report a fundraising activity as a program service accomplishment unless it is substantially related to the accomplishment of the organization's exempt purpose. The organization can explain in the narrative of the activity amounts related to donated services or use of materials, equipment, or facilities they received or used in connection with a specific program service. However, these values should not be included in revenue, expenses, or grants. For each program service activity reported, the organization will have to report the number of grants and allocations to others, the total expenses, and the revenue, if any. The grants and expenses, so for Section 501c3 and 501c4 organizations, they must enter the total expenses, including grants and allocations, in the expense section. For each program service listed, organizations must report any revenue obtained from the activity. Revenue would include unrelated business income from a business that exploits an exempt function, such as advertising in a journal. Organizations that do not conduct activities or generate fees for the services provided are also considered program service activities. A common example will be an outdoor club where the members and the non-members are charged for using the club's premises. That may be considered unrelated trade or business activity. Reporting program service revenue is separate from program service activity section. Program service revenue is the gross revenue earned from every activity the organization conducts. Various program service revenues could include program-related investment income. This is the income the organization obtains that is used to accomplish a tax-exempt status rather than to gain a profit. For example, scholarship loans and low-interest loans to charitable organizations may be considered program-related investment income. Government fees and contracts, an organization that provides a service, facility, or product to a government agency can consider the payment received for those services as program service revenue. So as I'm sure many of you know, the November 15th deadline is quickly approaching, which is kind of what we're focusing on right now. A 990 series return deadline is based on an organization's tax year. Your annual 990 series return must be filed by the 15th day of the 5th month following the end of the organization's tax year. If the 15th of the month falls on a weekend or federal holiday, the deadline is moved to the next business day. Most organizations have either a calendar tax year that runs from January 1st through December 31st or a fiscal tax year that runs from July 1st through June 30th. However, a fiscal tax year can be any 12-month time frame other than January 1st through December 31st. If you're short on time and you're concerned you won't be able to complete the return on or prior to the deadline, you can file an 8868 extension form to apply for a 6-month deadline extension. If you do have a November 15th deadline, you can start filing that form now. So you can give us a call if you have questions on reporting program services or any other aspects of the return that will allow you plenty of time to complete that information and communicate with us prior to the deadline. We'll do a short question and answer time. If you want to go ahead and post your questions in the chat, we will review them and answer them live. Please remember that we are not tax advisors and we will not be providing tax advice. And if you have a question specific to your Tax990 account, you can send us an email and we can take a look at your account together and address that at a later time. If you have questions on the information currently being discussed, go ahead and post those in the chat. Okay, we have one question about filing late and the penalties associated with that. So Tax990 is not able to provide information on penalties. You would have to contact the IRS if you file your return late. They would be able to provide you more information on penalties. We have a question on, let's see, it says they are late filing for 2 years and wondering if Tax990 can help with that. Yes, so Tax990 currently offers the current and 2 prior tax years. So you can file for 2020, 2021, and 2022 with Tax990 at this time. Once we release the 2023 tax year forms, we will no longer support 2020. So if you do need to file a 2020 return, please go ahead and do that as soon as possible. It's likely in December we will stop supporting that 2020 form. We have a question wondering if a tax preparer can use Tax990. Yes, we do have the option for a tax preparer to create an account and file for all of their clients from one account. So Tax990 supports either just an organization member, such as a treasurer or a board member, using our software to file, or a CPA firm to also use our software to file forms. So it's pretty open to anybody that needs it. We have someone wondering if once you start the form, if it has to be finished or you can start and stop several times. So we definitely understand that it is a lengthy process to file these forms. So you can begin the form and end, stop and come back to it at any time. It will save you progress, so you can always pick up where you left off at a later time. We have a question on whether or not we support the 199. If you mean the California 199 form, yes, you can file the California 199 with Tax990. We have a question about the NAICS codes for program service requirements. If you're reporting your information as unrelated business income and you're completing a 990T form, you will be able to enter the codes for that. We do have an option on the forms as well when you're explaining your program service revenue to indicate those codes. We have a question wondering, is it acceptable to report one program service activity if that is all that was conducted? Yes, if you only conducted one program service activity, you can only enter one, but it is mandatory to enter at least one activity so that the IRS knows you're adhering to your mission and your exempt status. Please keep in mind we cannot provide direct tax advice or tell you what should or should not be reported or how to report that specifically. For those questions, please contact a tax advisor. Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and move on now with the rest of our presentation. Thank you for those questions. Those were all great. We'll have another Q&A towards the end of the presentation as well. And of course, Aubrey is still here helping with answering them as we go along. So if you do have questions along the way, just go ahead, put them in the chat, and she will respond directly to you. Tax990 is a market-leading IRS authorized e-file provider with over a decade of experience e-filing tax forms. When you file with Tax990, we provide you with the excellent live customer support, competitive pricing, and options to file for previous tax years. Since the IRS has mandated e-filing, Tax990 is your solution for electronically filing your annual 990 series return. We do also offer filing amended returns with Tax990, even if you didn't file the original form with us. So if you do have a 2020, 21, or 22 form that you need to make adjustments to, you can file an amended return as well. We're just going to talk about some of the key features that Tax990 offers. If you have been using for Tax990 for several years, you may know of some of these features. If you don't know, then we can, answer questions along the way about those features, or you can give us a call and we'd be happy to show you more in depth how some of these things work. So now that we've reviewed the different tax preparers or the different specific details of program service accomplishments and reporting that information, we're just going to go over a couple of different items. So we have the internal audit and auto calculations. So this is Tax990 performs an internal audit after you complete the return, which verifies that the requirements from the IRS form instructions have been met. The audit helps verify that your calculations are accurate and the necessary schedules are generated. So the system won't allow you to transmit a return until you've passed the internal audit. It's an automatic process that happens while you're working on the return. And when you're finished, you'll go to the audit page and it will show you all of the errors that you have. And this just helps make sure that you've met all of the IRS instructions and helps reduce the likelihood of a rejected return. So it will explain the error and the part in reference so you can navigate back to that, you can fix it, and you can proceed. As mentioned, we do provide auto calculations. This feature helps remove the guesswork from filing by calculating several areas of the return. So for example, when you input all your different categories of revenue, the total revenue will be calculated accordingly. We provide an acceptance letter or rejection notice in the case that your return is rejected by the IRS. Tax990 provides the reason for the IRS rejection and allows you to resolve and retransmit the return at no additional cost. For example, if the IRS rejected your return because the tax year provided does not match what the IRS has in their database, you'll be able to edit the information on the return and retransmit it. It's important to know if your return was accepted. So once the IRS provides a status update, you'll receive an email with the acceptance notice. The IRS acceptance letter will be available in your account for your records. So a lot of times the internal audit is going to really significantly reduce your likelihood of a rejection. A lot of times if a form is rejected, it's because basic organization information that is reported doesn't match the IRS database. So if you say that you're a 501c3 and the IRS database has you listed as a 501c4, then your form will likely be rejected. But Tax990 has no way of knowing what your tax exempt status is. So those are the situations where a form is rejected. A lot of times these can be avoided by referencing your determination letter prior to completing a return to verify that you're filing the correct form, that you have the correct exempt status, and that you have the correct tax year. If the form or when the form is accepted, like I mentioned, we'll provide the acceptance notice in your account that you can download at any time. The acceptance notice has a submission ID number on it that is provided by the IRS. So once you receive that acceptance notice, you can be confident that the IRS accepted your return and no additional action is required. If you have questions about your return and you need to contact the IRS, you would use that submission ID number when speaking with the IRS so they can reference the appropriate form. When filing from year to year, a lot of your information remains the same. So with Tax990, we provide the ability to transfer information directly from a prior year. When filing consecutive years, the organization information, public charity status, books are in the care of details, Schedule B contributor names and addresses, list of officers, and prior year revenue and expenses can all be transferred to the current year return. This is an optional feature and information can be changed once the transfer is made, so it leaves it pretty customizable. Additionally, if you filed a 990 EZ last year and you had a higher income and need to file a 990 long form this year, in a very similar way, a lot of the information will transfer over. It tends to transfer differently if you're doing the same form from year to year, but there is an option if you're upgrading or downgrading a form from year to year as well. We also understand that it's not always easy to know what additional information is required on your return. So when you complete a return with Tax990, we help determine what schedules are required based on the information you provide on the form. The schedules required will automatically generate for you to complete. Additionally, only the necessary parts of this schedule will appear, so you're not completing information that's not required. For example, if you make the selection on the 990 form that your organization is a 501c3, page 1 of Schedule A will generate automatically. And once you choose your reason for public charity status on page 1 of Schedule A, the necessary additional parts of Schedule A will be enabled. Also, something like Schedule B, if you indicate one of your contributions was a non-cash contribution, then page 3 of Schedule B will automatically generate for you to complete. If you do not indicate any of your contributions are non-cash, if they're all person or payroll, then you're only going to have to complete page 1 and page 2 of Schedule B, but the system will automatically figure those things for you. Filing with Tax990 can be a pretty quick process. You will start by creating an account if you don't already have one at tax990.com, where you'll add your organization information such as the address, the principal officer information, phone number, so on and so forth. And then once you add your organization information, you'll choose which form that you need to file and what tax year. You'll also choose which filing format you prefer to use. Tax990 offers 2 different filing formats. We have the interview-based and the form-based. So the interview-based is going to be a question and answer format. Did your organization do this? Yes or no? Based on your yes or no selection, the next part will generate for you. The form-based filing format is going to look more like a PDF of the form, and you'll complete it line by line. You do not have the option to switch back and forth between the filing formats. However, you can start over on a new return with the alternate filing format. Once you complete the return, it'll go through the audit. This is an automatic process. We get questions quite often about how to initiate the audit. It is an automatic process. So once you complete the form and you go to continue, it'll automatically go through the audit and give you the errors that have to be resolved prior to filing. Once all of those errors are resolved, you'll have the opportunity to share the return. So if you are filing on behalf of your organization and you have board members or CEOs or other organization members that want to review prior to filing, you'll have the option to share that with them either electronically or manually. If you choose to share electronically, you'll be able to send an email to the necessary individual where they will be able to log into the form and take a look at what you've completed. They won't be able to make changes on it. They will be able to make suggestions in a comment format, and they can approve what you've completed, but they won't be able to change it directly. Once they provide approval or comments, you'll be notified and can make those updates. If you choose to share manually, that just means that you intend to either not share with anybody and you're ready to proceed, or you just want to print out a copy and give it to a person manually instead of an electronic format. Once you share the return, you can transmit it to the IRS. As mentioned, it is all a self-service platform. So you click all of the buttons up to the transmit to the IRS button, and it processes it for you. And then you'll be notified once it's accepted or rejected. We do offer a PDF of the return during the entire process. So while you're working on the return, you'll have access to a draft copy of the form. After you transmit the return, you'll have access to a professional copy of the form. We offer customer support that's dedicated, personalized, and available. You won't need to be on hold for several hours or be put on a callback list. When you need assistance with your return, you can give us a call or reach out via chat or email, and we're here to help along the way. As the November 15th deadline approaches, our wait times may be longer. If you give us a call and we aren't able to get to your phone call, please leave us a voicemail and we will call you back at our earliest convenience. But we do not leave the office at the end of the day until all of our calls have been returned. So we will get back to you. You also, like I said, can send us an email, or you can join our live chat, who is available a little bit longer into the day. If you don't want to give us a call or contact us, that's fine. We have an extensive knowledge base. We have a YouTube channel. We have a blog at tax990.com. We have a knowledge base, all with so many tools and resources to help answer some of your questions along the way. So please check those out. They're very beneficial. They're very informative. Oops. We'll do one more Q&A before we finish up here. It looks like Aubrey has helped several of you now. Thank you, Aubrey, for that. If you have questions, go ahead, put them in the chat, and we can talk about them here before we finish up. We have somebody wondering if you need a reason or if you're required to give a reason for applying for a 6-month extension. We didn't talk about the individual forms today. If you have questions about the individual forms, please reach out to us. But the 8868 is an automatic 6-month extension form that you can apply. It does not require a reasoning or an excuse or an explanation of any kind. It's a very quick process, and you transmit it to the IRS, you get the acceptance, and then you have a 6-month extension. If you apply for 6-month extension, you only get one. So for example, anybody that applied for an extension that had an original deadline of May now has a deadline of November 15th. So they have to file November 15th. They can't apply for another extension. If you have a May deadline, or I'm sorry, a November deadline, and you apply for a 6-month extension, then your deadline will be moved to May, which is why our biggest deadlines are May and November. But it is an automatic extension and it doesn't require an excuse. We have a question about calculating the deadline. We are happy to help you determine your deadline if you're not sure of what it is. It's based on your tax year. So if you know your tax year, just shoot us an email and say, hey, this is my tax year, what's my deadline? And we can help you determine that. We also have a deadline calculator on our website at tax990.com where you can input the tax year end date and it will tell you what your deadline is. As I've mentioned, right now we're focusing on the November 15th deadline. So if you have a fiscal tax year of July 1st through June 30th, your deadline is November 15th. If you're not sure, like I said, use the calculator or send us an email and we can help you determine that. We have a question about filing for 2019. Right now, there's not providers out there that offer 2019. We are suggesting clients to contact the IRS to determine how to backfile for years prior to, or 2019 and prior. Tax990 supports 2020, 21, and 22 right now. The only state form that we support at this time is the California 199. We do not currently support any other state forms. You would have to go directly to your state Department of Revenue to determine what requirements they have and how to process those. We have a question on what part of the 990 form is program service. So part 3 of the 990 form is going to be where you report your program service accomplishments. If you choose our form-based filing format, it'll lay that out quite specifically for you. If you choose our interview-based filing format, it's just going to prompt you through the necessary information needed to complete that section. If you filed for an extension in May or at any time and your extension deadline has ended, you have to file the 990 series return at this point. If you miss, so the question is, if you filed in May and now you have a new November deadline and you can't meet that, if you don't meet that extension deadline, then you're just going to be considered late and you may have penalties with that. So I would highly encourage you to start your form now if you have a November deadline to help ensure you get it completed on time and don't have to deal with any penalties from the IRS or late fees or anything like that. Once your extension ends, you just have to file the form. Again, this webinar is recorded. We will send an email to everybody that attended today with the information to view the link probably tomorrow, and we'll also make it available at tax990.com so you can view it at any point if you have questions and there was something we discussed today. Okay, so our questions are really slowing down, so we're going to go ahead and just proceed here. If you think of anything later, send us an email, support@tax990.com, or give us a call. We're happy to help you with any follow-up questions that you have. We do have several other webinars coming up in our educational series between now and the November 15th deadline. In a couple weeks, we're going to be talking about the 990T and the Schedule A reporting requirements. If you have unrelated business income over $1,000 and you need to file a 990T, you can join us for that one. We're going to, on October 12th, answer some commonly asked questions. This is things that we get asked as a support team regularly, questions that are often searched on our knowledge base, questions that we see all over the place in our social medias and things like that. We're going to break those down and help answer those in a live environment. On October 24th, we're going to talk about filing requirements for the 990 PF and what organizations qualify for a 990 PF form. November 2nd, we're going to talk about the 990N and who can file it, the filing requirements for that, and we'll talk about the very simple process to complete that 990N with Tax990. And our last webinar will be a just last minute live Q&A. We'll talk briefly about some of the filing requirements from the IRS and features, and then we'll just do a live Q&A. So if you have questions, you can join us for that and get those answered in a live environment. That's it for today. Thank you for joining me, and please reach out to our support team for assistance with your 990 series returns, and go ahead and get those November 15th deadline forms started. Again, please reach out, support@tax990.com, give us a call, or you can reach us on our live chat. Thanks.